Hey, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the former ambassador David Friedman, who was working with Donald Trump to put the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. And I believe that when Donald Trump gains the presidency again, he is likely to be working with Donald Trump to further this plan, this sovereignty plan that he was outlining February 29th, 2024. So I just want to discuss this a little bit. Former U.S. envoy unveils sovereignty plan. Former Ambassador David Friedman's proposal protects Israel's security, respects biblical covenants, and affords civil rights and human dignity to all. So the covenant with the red heifer is going to be a huge one. Israel suffered the worst massacre in its history on October 7th at the hands of Hamas, an Iranian terror proxy that was voted into power and continues to be supported by the majority of Palestinians in Gaza. The attack proved long-standing Israeli fears that any independent Palestinian entity without overriding Israeli security control would become a staging ground for barbaric terrorism against the Jewish state. And now, as Israel fights to permanently remove Hamas, a U.S.-designated terror organization from the Gaza Strip, key members of the international community, including the United States and the United Kingdom, are doubling down on calls for the creation of a Palestinian state in all of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. These nations are considering official recognition of Palestinian statehood, while Israel fights to restore order in the region, whether or not Israelis or Palestinians support a two-state outcome, let alone are willing and able to reach an elusive agreement. Of course, God doesn't want people dividing up his land. But yet for the international community, there has only been a singular proposal for ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, dividing a tiny parcel of land, one smaller than New Jersey, into two separate states for peoples with opposing religions and cultures. It is in this context that former U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman is now proposing an alternative that recognizes the Jewish state's biblical claims to Judea and Samaria, as well as Israel's abilities to police the territory and build lasting infrastructure that can improve the standard of living for all the residents of the world's most contested territory. Friedman on Thursday unveiled a paradigm-shifting proposal calling for full Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley. The plan, dubbed, quote, the future of Judea and Samaria, end quote, and devised by the former ambassador's Friedman Center for Peace through Strength, seeks to deliver a solution that protects Israel's security, respects biblical covenants, and affords civil rights and human dignity to all. That is very interesting that the UK is involved in this situation, because this helps set the stage for them coming under the Commonwealth, under a king, and putting him on the throne, so that they think that they can have peace and build their temple and all of that. And they think that the building of the temple is going to bring world peace. So it's interesting that it's mentioning the biblical covenants are to be kept here. And we know that the red heifer ceremony is supposed to happen at the end of April, and April 22nd is the first night of Passover. And they likely would try to sacrifice a lamb. If they did the red heifer ceremony first, then they would do a lamb after that. Friedman knows a thing or two about bringing peace to the Middle East. He served as America's ambassador to Israel under President Donald Trump. The years in which he served were among the quietest in Israel from a security perspective, in large part because of the defunding of Israel's enemies, including the Islamic Republic of Iran, as well as the Palestinian Authority and many of its supporting UN agencies. The Trump administration also recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I would like to say one more thing right there. Remember, I was telling you that the Sanhedrin that's trying to get into power through Netanyahu's government. They want to replace the United Nations agencies. So here we had Donald Trump defunding them. So Donald Trump is going to make this progress. And he declared that Jewish settlements in Judea and Samaria are not inconsistent with international law, a policy now being challenged by the Biden administration. More impressive yet was the signing of 4 historic peace treaties between Israel and its neighbors across the greater Middle East and North Africa, known as the Abraham Accords. While the successful ambassador has yet to discuss any further role with the former president, and it's obvious that they would be working together to advance the Jewish goal, and it's widely believed that Friedman could once again occupy a key post with significant policy-making influence in the Middle East should Trump win the re-election in November. Friedman presented an outline of the proposal at a launch event of the Keep God's Land movement during the National Religious Broadcasters Conference in Nashville, Tennessee last week. That's the one I reported on. And explaining the need for an alternative vision for a two-state solution, Friedman asserted that a Palestinian state represents an existential security threat to the state of Israel. He added that efforts by past U.S. governments to design security protections if Israel surrenders this territory have all failed. The two-state solution sought by the Biden administration and much of the international community is nothing but a dead letter that would only perpetuate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Instead, there needs to be an honest, optimistic vision that goes beyond the two-state dogma, the ambassador told the JNS on Thursday. The Friedman Center's vision for the future seeks to extend Israeli sovereignty to the disputed area as part of the tripartite agreement between the Jewish state, the United States, and an expanded group of Muslim countries that have normalized ties with Israel under the Abrahamic Accords. In exchange, Palestinians in Judea and Samaria will be awarded permanent residency. So then they questioned Ambassador Friedman. On February 22nd, your foundation, the Friedman Center for Peace Through Strength, to much fanfare, unveiled your plan for Judea and Samaria at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. So not only was Donald Trump in Nashville at this convention, but apparently Ambassador Friedman was there. So you know that they've got big plans for Israel when he gets back into the presidency. Can you briefly describe the contours of the plan? He says, in a nutshell, the plan provides for Israeli sovereignty over all of Judea and Samaria, permanent residency of all Palestinians living in that territory, and American and Gulf support for a, quote, Marshall Plan to bring better health care, education, and prosperity to the region. It is a win-win plan that comports with biblical covenants, security concerns, the advancement of human dignity for every one of God's creatures. Why was this presented now? He says, I've been advocating against the two-state solution ever since I've been out of government. We need an alternative to a two-state solution being pushed by the Biden administration. Biden's approach does not work. It rewards terror, creates what undoubtedly will become a terror state, creates an existential risk for Israel and its neighbors, and violates the covenants that God made to the Jewish people. Those pushing the two-state solution argue that there's no alternative to their plan. Well, here is the alternative, and it's the only path that works. On February 23rd, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken appeared to reverse the Trump administration's Pompeo doctrine, which stated that civilian Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria were not necessarily illegal, according to international law. What do you make of this? Friedman says, first of all, I think it is wrong. The Trump plan proposed the largest retention by Israel of land in Judea and Samaria, and of any plan that was ever promulgated. If it was illegal, we wouldn't have done it. We studied the issue and concluded that it wasn't. In the simplest sense, lots of different territories were divided after World War I, after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, and were handed off to various territorial mandates. The Jewish people were the only nation who were assured of any rights to Palestine at the 1920 San Remo Conference. The Jews were recognized as having a legal entitlement to Palestine, and nobody else was. The actual title to the land was given to the Jews. The Ottomans had it for 400 years, and then they relinquished all claims to the land. The British were given the land in trust. They weren't supposed to keep the land. 72% of the land was peeled off and given to Jordan. Now there are no Arab countries with a claim to the land. If you look at all the potential claimants, the Ottomans, the British, the Jordanians, they all walked away from the territory. Meanwhile, the Palestinians never had any claim. The Jewish people have a claim based on biblical history, the covenant God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If you are in the State Department, once you tell the Palestinians that, they own it. What incentive do they have to compromise? You are guaranteeing the conflict will continue. The current policy is self-defeating. Question: how do you respond to diplomats who refer to Judea and Samaria as the West Bank? There are politics behind it. I think that the appropriate term is Judea and Samaria. West Bank was a name given to the territory by Jordan, and I think that is unfair. These diplomats are all pushing at best for a two-state solution, and by denying Israel's historical connection to the land, they feel it is making it more palatable to get Israel to give it away. And by the way, it's obvious that from a de facto perspective, the Oslo Accords are over. The Palestinians in the U.S. are trying to cling to parts of Oslo they like and breach the parts they don't like, and that tells me it isn't worth the paper that it's printed on. Under the Friedman Center peace plan, what rights will the Palestinians have? He says essentially all the rights that do not threaten Israel. That includes the right to live in their homes in perpetuity, to vote for their local leaders, and to transact business within Israel and the rest of the world. Will they vote in national elections? Existing Arab citizens and their offspring will vote in national elections, but not Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria. Israel cannot swap a military risk for a demographic one, but Palestinians will have significant voting rights on the local level on most matters that affect their daily lives. Won't that system offend many who will claim this is a form of apartheid? This is nothing like apartheid, he says. In racist South Africa, blacks were taken from their homes and placed in Bantustans with substandard living conditions. Under our plan, Palestinians will be assured of permanent residency in their homes and receive a significant upgrade in infrastructure, healthcare, education, and overall prosperity. Let's remember that this is the Middle East, not America or Europe. There are no democracies here other than Israel. When Egypt ran an election, the Muslim Brotherhood took over until the military under President el-Sisi gained power, and the world breathed a sigh of relief. Our construct, indeed, maximizes Palestinian self-governance and prosperity without jeopardizing Israel's security. Another point, I don't think anyone considers the United States an apartheid state, even though Puerto Rico, Guam, and other U.S. territories do not vote in national elections. This system works because the benefits achieved by these localities from their relationship with the United States outweigh the restrictions on voting. The same will be true here. And one last point, there are around 50 Muslim nations in the world, and most go to great lengths to preserve their Muslim character. Not only does the world not object, but visitors are highly respectful of these practices, as they should be. There is room in the world for one Jewish state, and the price of a Jewish state cannot be national suicide through a two-state solution. Question: won't the Palestinians reject this plan out of hand as they have all other plans in the past? Of course they will, but then things will get interesting. The Palestinian people have no interest in living within a state run by the Palestinian Authority, which is a corrupt, incompetent, and repressive organization, as they see the opportunity to begin to emerge. I believe they will embrace it. And what about the terrorists? Israel's war on terror must continue to a successful conclusion, but this plan enables Israel to offer the Palestinians a carrot as well as a stick. In essence, Israel's message will be, if you want to kill us, we will kill you first. But if you want to live with us in peace, we can offer you the opportunities beyond your wildest dreams. Mr. Ambassador, there have been other proposals for Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria in the past. And how does this differ from the prior plans? Prior plans sought to retain Area C for Israel and cede areas A and B to the Palestinians. But if areas A and B remain isolated from Israel, they will just turn into Gaza, and we will be perpetuating the conflict. Israel needs sovereignty over areas A and B along with C, both for its security and to create the opportunity for Palestinians to prosper within Israeli society. I pivoted from the Trump administration's deal of the century because the Palestinian response to the Trump plan was so hostile. It seems futile to offer a compromise to those who don't want to compromise. I'm convinced that after October 7th, any discussion of a Palestinian state will incentivize further terror. We had a dry run for a Palestinian state both in Gaza and Area A of Judea and Samaria. These are places where no Jews live and there is no Israeli military presence. We've seen that it doesn't work. It creates a bubble in which terrorism flourishes, and these are painful lessons that we learned on October 7th. And how long will this take to be achieved? It could take a generation, especially with all the hatred and distrust that has emerged from Hamas's barbaric assault. But I think the fundamental principle is sound. To all Palestinians willing to live in peace with Israel, Israel, with the help from its friends, will assume the responsibility for their well-being. Again, this works from all three relevant perspectives: Israel's security, advancing human dignity, and being faithful to biblical covenants. I believe that this plan puts Israel on the right trajectory to the right outcome. So, the covenant with many, that's a blood covenant. We know this, as I've explained, that the Lord had revealed this in Daniel's prophecy, because in the middle of the 7 years, he stops the sacrificial system, the king. And we know that it's the red heifer ceremony that begins the sacrificial system, which could very well happen this Passover. So Israel is definitely wanting to create this situation with the Palestinians, to let them live there. And then it would be through the Middle East economic corridor that they're building through Gaza, through the Mediterranean Sea, to connect to the south with India, and then up through Saudi Arabia and into Israel, and then across the sea to Cyprus and Greece, and it would go to Italy and ultimately up to France. So this is why France is in talks about the hostage situation, trying to get the hostages released. They want to get this corridor going where they have all of this shipping and trade going on. And this is just really interesting how it's all setting up. But ultimately, with the UK being involved in this process of, the Judea and Samaria, it's very interesting that it's the king, Charles III, that could really broker the peace between the two by having them become parts of the Commonwealth under him. So the Sanhedrin is the governmental body. It's the judicial body that helps to put a king in place. And so the king would give them power and authority as kings with him when they sign whatever they're going to sign. This covenant is going to be an agreement with all the Jewish people worldwide to be under the authority of the Sanhedrin judicial system. I wanted to let you know what was happening with this Friedman gentleman and how he's working behind the scenes with Donald Trump to get Israel to retake not only Judea and Samaria, but the area, west of the Jordan River there. and of course Gaza. So this is why it's all happening the way that it is. I had more I wanted to share, but I don't want to make this too long, so I'll just cut this one off for now. And this is important information that you need to know is really happening behind the scenes, trying to propel everything in biblical prophecy and with the covenants of Israel. And that will be the covenant with many Jewish people and, you know, whoever comes alongside Israel and helps them to build the third temple. So the king could definitely, you know, broker that deal with them. But I think it's interesting that Donald Trump's working behind the scenes at the National Religious Broadcasters event. He was there with the former Ambassador Friedman, who can get back in power if Donald Trump gets back in power. And then they can further these things like the third temple and all of that. So this could happen very fast. And, you know, things are being set up behind the scenes before Donald Trump even gets in the presidency. So they've been meeting together. Okay, well, I'll let you go for now. Please give it a like for the algorithms, and please support my work and my channel. You know, it's very critical for me, especially because I always give kind of a commentary of what I see happening biblically in these articles. So, or whatever the Holy Spirit's revealed to me, I put it with some of what's happening here. So anyway, if you want to help, it's paypal.me/KKROCOCO. And the mailing donation address is Kimberly K. Ballard, Ballard, P.O. Box 246, Niwot, Niwot, Colorado is CO 80544. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. My birthday's coming up this month, my mom's birthday later. And so I've got a couple of nieces that have March birthdays too. So anyway, I'm glad that it's turning spring. I saw my first crocuses the other day. I used to love to go out in the front porch and step off the porch and look at my crocuses coming up. They were yellow, bright yellow, and then I had purple ones. So I miss them, and I got to see some that were popping up outside of an inn, and that was really neat. So I'll talk to you later, guys. Hope you appreciated this. I'll see you in a little while. Bye.